Welcome to New Eden, traveler. I'm Katia, and I'll be your guide on this journey of exploration. Over the course of my near decade of travel around the cluster, I saw things that I had only dreamed about as a child. Sights that left me in awe of the beauty and majesty that is New Eden, and the crushing devastation that humanity could bestow upon themselves and others. There were many who inspired me along my journey, but only one I aspired to be like, Mark 726 of Eve Travel. His holoblog was a terrific guide to every new region I encountered, and I hope to bring it to life for you in this series. Join us as we explore and share with you some of the most fascinating sights the cluster has to offer, from humanity's humble beginnings to whispers of tales shrouded in mystery that have become near legend. I hope you'll join us in this endeavor to explore our universe together. Somewhere, something wonderful is waiting to be found.
And you're live.
Welcome to Talking in Stations. It's time for our podcast. I am Matterall here with Kenneth Feld. How's it going, Kenneth?
Good afternoon.
Nick Bison is engineering. How you doing, Nick?
I'm back here having fun.
Awesome. So today we're going to tackle a few interviews. The first one is Katia, who you know as the traveler that first I don't know if this is the right way to say it, circumvented the galaxy. Basically went to every system in New Eden, including wormholes, mapped it all out and did it without being killed. CCP recognized that amazing achievement and was awarded her character a giant exploration statue that was the first of its kind. And Katia is putting together a really cool series of exploration that is going to be just amazing. So you're going to want to watch it. It's called the Traveler Series. We'll talk about that. Katia also happens to be the head of head of the Signal Cartel, which issues out bookmarks for entry and exit from FI.RE. And there was a little bit of a scandal there, and we'll actually talk to him about that too. Then I want to introduce you to Cosmo, who I met recently, and he is a ninja miner and making a load of ISK. So we'll explore his mining style and how he's already adapted to some of the changes and is doing really well. All right, then we'll go to player news. We want to remind everybody there's a Snowball fight in Luminarie later in about an hour. You want to get there for that. It's a big free fight, and it's a lot of fun. It's a tradition. And then we'll go to game news and talk about the year in review videos, and we'll show our videos. Some are amazing and some are sad. And that basically is a video put out by CCP that shows you what you did that year, all the stats from all your accounts. And then we'll talk about some of the player news and what players have been getting up to. So let's give it a go here. All right. I'm going to grab Katia is here with us now. How are you doing, Katia?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing good.
Our pleasure, man. Katia, as you know, is an explorer and the leader now of Signal Cartel, which is an explorer corporation / alliance that has been in existence for a few years now and has a real solid membership. And they actually do a lot of really cool services. Katia, you want to tell us about Signal Cartel at first?
Yeah, sure. As you said, we are a exploration corp. You may know us as Eve Scout, which is our alliance. Signal Cartel is the corporation. We have typically around 300 to 400 members. And if you can think of us as like herding cats, we all kind of do our own thing, pretty much solo players that like to group together and explore New Eden. So you will find us everywhere. We're in high sec, low sec, null sec, wormholes, wherever exploration's to be had. And that could take the form of the in-game mechanics of the data and relic sites, or it could just take the form of going sightseeing. So we have quite the variety of folks.
And as explorers, you have a certain credo. What's that credo?
We do. We fly under our Corp credo, which in a nutshell says that we are neutral to all and friendly in our travels. We respect all play styles and do our best to provide a service to New Eden in several forms. If you're familiar with the FI.RE bookmark, the FI.RE website, which will show all the connections in and out of FI.RE, that's one of the services we provide. On top of that, we provide the FI.RE bookmarks. We also have our wormhole rescue service that we provide, where if someone gets stuck in a hole and lost their probes, they can effectively dial 911 and we'll do our best to get you out of there.
Like St. Bernard's in the snow. That's what I think of you guys.
St. Bernard's in the snow, yeah.
Right. So that's Signal Cartel, and you're the new leader after Minxie, who was a longtime leader.
Actually, Thrice Happus was between
Thrice,
Minxie and I. Yeah. So Minxie was our first CEO and led it for several years. Thrice took it over for a couple of years, and now I'm over it along with Alder Roanoke, who's my COO.
Cool. Well, my mistake. So that you're the third. And exploration is a big part of Signal Cartel and a big part of obviously what you've done in your career. So tell us about this really cool series, The Travelers.
Yeah, sure thing. I've dabbled with videos over the years and have always wanted to do something like this. And there's several things that motivated me to do this. And of course, while I was doing my journey, I really didn't have time and effort to put into something like this. But in a nutshell, if you think of Discovery Channel type shows, in particular Cosmos, if you're familiar with Carl Sagan's Cosmos back in the day, and more recently Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos, that's really the source inspiration for this series. So if you can visualize that, then that's what I'm trying to bring with a new Eden flair to it. So I want to show some of the sites, maybe some of the, and hopefully some of the obscure sites as well, and the lore along with it in that kind of format.
That's cool. So how long will these videos be? And
so the plan is to do 5 episodes, releasing one a month starting in January. They're roughly around 8-9 minutes, and hopefully present to the folks just chunks of lore in bite-sized in a bite-sized meal, I guess you could say, just like a snack maybe.
The 10-minute, yeah. YouTube's going to love you. They like that 10-minute mark. Do we have a chance to see that, Nick? Do you happen to have the trailer?
The short answer is yes, I do. But last time I tried to run it, it froze off my machine. So I'm kind of hesitant to run it.
You scared? Okay.
I have a question for you. What type of third-party tools do you use, and how do they directly correlate to the website, or is that a manual port over?
In reference to,
Like your bookmarks, do you use Siggy or one of the other third-party tools, or have you guys made your own? And does that export directly to the website, or do you guys do all that manually?
I think I follow your question. Johnny Splunk, if you remember him back at Signal Cartel, he initially created the FI.RE site, and it was pretty much and honestly, I don't know the inner workings of it, so I'm not exactly sure how he goes about getting the information in there. I know he does, the API work, ESI work, I guess, to enable some of that. We do have some plugins to Tripwire to help enable some of that. But the actual mechanics, I don't know. I'm not familiar with it or plugged into it. As far as the bookmarks aspect of it, what we do is we internally, of course, have a folder that we set up that our scouts can drop bookmarks into, and then we've now are moving them into the public folder, which we share in the Eve-Scout in-game. What's the word? channel.
Yeah, shared bookmark folder. You
Yeah,
just make
shared
it
bookmark
active, and you have
Mhm.
access to them.
Correct. Yeah. So there's a link in that channel. If you're joined up in there at the very top of the message of the day, just click on that and you'll get access to the shared folder.
Yeah, I was more wondering about. Obviously, you said Tripwire, so you use Tripwire, not Siggy, and then
hmm
if there was actual APIs, so that a corp or an alliance could have their own Tripwire set up and have the links or whatever go directly to a web-based system like you guys have for internal use, type thing, Fury Road or whatever you want to call it. That way, an alliance can set this up themselves. And I was just wondering if these third-party tools were public or whether it's something that your guy developed himself, and uh, he's just hacked it together, and he uses it, and it's not really ready for prime time, or whether it's something that's available to everyone.
Yeah, those would be questions for Johnny for sure. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with the inner workings of it, how he goes about it, but he's pretty protective of it. So, and I think he actually offers an API to the Thera connections.
Yeah, and that's probably he does. I mean, that's on the website, so I would expect that.
Yeah. Okay.
I,
Okay.
I was just wondering how kind of easy it was to get from Tripwire to a website, but that's
Yeah.
I can talk to him separately.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I believe Thrice was a programmer too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he dabbled in it a little bit. Mostly he delved in the East Scout Rescue side. He led that up for a few years before becoming our second CEO.
Yeah, and then you're not unfamiliar with programming as well. Okay,
I'm not. No, yeah, by trade, I'm a old school application programmer, but mostly a server application analyst now these days.
All right, let's take a quick look at this video. Nick, I'll put it up. Let's see if you can focus in on that. And I'll just roll it. Let's take a look at this trailer for New Eden Traveler series.
And I did link it in to chat.
Okay, cool. Well, here it is.
Welcome to New Eden, traveler. I'm Katia, and I'll be your guide on this journey of exploration. Over the course of my near decade of travel around the cluster, I saw things that I had only dreamed about as a child. Sights that left me in awe of the beauty and majesty that is New Eden, and the crushing devastation that humanity could bestow upon themselves and others. There were many who inspired me along my journey, but only one I aspired to be like, Mark 726 of Eve Travel. His holoblog was a terrific guide to every new region I encountered, and I hope to bring it to life for you in this series. Join us as we explore and share with you some of the most fascinating sights the cluster has to offer, from humanity's humble beginnings to whispers of tales shrouded in mystery that have become near legend. I hope you'll join us in this endeavor to explore our universe together. Somewhere, something wonderful is waiting to be found.
That's great. So Mark 726 is your hero. Mine too.
Yeah, we started, I think, within just a couple of weeks of each other in December of 2009, actually. And then, of course, his blog got very popular very fast. And I, clued into that. And yeah, he was a huge inspiration. Kept me going on my journey for sure as he went out and explored.
And you've made this series with his help?
Yep, he is helping me on the backside with lore validation, if you will. He's confirming that I'm not fibbing when I'm saying stuff.
Fact checker. Yeah. For those that don't know, you should know. Eve Travel dot? What's the?
It's
Is it?
WordPress, I believe. Yeah, I can get the link.
It's blog. I think it's the blog. Yeah, WordPress or blog, G blog, whatever that was. Anyway,
Yeah.
look up on the internet, Eve Online, Eve Travel, all one word, and it'll take you to the site that he's built over the years. It just has like all kinds of landmarks that you can visit, tells you about their history and why they're important and everything. And what you're doing is bringing that to life with actual video and visiting it yourself. And then you have beautiful narration. Katia's voice kind of doesn't sound like you, but sounds better.
I would have to agree.
and so it's kind of a living version of that vault of knowledge and stuff, and delivered in a way where you can understand it, which I think is fantastic. All right,
thanks.
good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so we'll look forward to that in January, and then we'll see more after the very first one that you have prepared. Cool. All right, let's get into some controversy here. What happened to FI.RE bookmarks recently?
There's no controversy here. What are you talking about?
Nothing to see.
Nothing to see here. Halloween Day, I guess it was October 31st. The new event had just gone live where they had the 100% loot drop going on.
Oh.
And I think that may have been going on a day or two. It wasn't very long at all that it had been active. And unfortunately, we had a hole in our process with their shared bookmarks. Someone took advantage of that and exploited it. And honestly, if they hadn't have gotten greedy with it, we may not have noticed. But they got emboldened after they, moved one or two bookmarks to a. What happened is that the shared bookmarks will take you to a wormhole connection that you can find on the site. And so what they started doing was moving these wormhole bookmarks to a location that effectively drops you into a gate camp, if you will, for lack of a better word, and set up a kill zone and started taking out people, unfortunately. So
they basically rerouted all your signs to point into a direction of some pit that they dug. Basically.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they did all of them, but they started creeping up is my impression. I came in on the tail end of it. Alder, my COO, he was online when it started happening and folks started noticing. We had several reports come in saying, something's not right here. He had to step out, so I stepped in, and I think, they started with one bookmark, obviously, and then they added another, and then this is really getting good. And so then they added a third, I believe, and then that's when people started noticing, and then I stepped in and said, okay, we're taking these offline. So
relatively quick then. Was it within 24 hours?
Yeah, I think from start to finish, from when they actually started to the time that I turned them off, it may have been 4 to 5 hours.
That's really fast. That could have gone on for days.
Oh, it could have if they've been probably a little bit less greedy about it. Like I said, they could have gotten completely away with it. I like to think that was pretty quick. So
basically they, in very general terms, they hacked you, they redirected the signs to point to where they wanted to gank people, and they were successful at it, and they kept adding more and more bookmarks, which finally you guys took notice and said, yeah, we got to stop this. Who was it that did this? Do you know?
I know, but
do you know who it was, Kenneth?
No, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was the guy. I mean, the reason they escalated, I'm sure, is to get caught so that we would be able to say it's Snuff, because that's some of the guys from Snuff did it. It wasn't Snuff the Alliance. It was guys in Snuff that did it. So I'm sure part of the, it's not the kills they're after. I'm pretty sure it was the notoriety. So I think the idea was to get caught, but they did get caught. But what was funny, and I saw this on Reddit, I don't have the snippet to show you, but inside the, let's actually, before I go there, let's talk about what's happened since you shut those off.
Yeah, I would actually kind of disagree that they did it for the notoriety. behind the scenes from several resources, after we pulled them, started hearing things that their alliance leadership and their FCs were not at all happy with this corporation under their umbrella that had done this. My impression is, and I don't have facts on this, like I said, this is secondhand knowledge from several sources, but basically they did this on their own initiative. They got a little carried away with it. The alliance leadership was not aware of this operation, and their FCs very much like using the Thera bookmarks as much as other folks do in New Eden as well. And my understanding is they kind of got hammered down a little bit.
By?
I don't know.
It was in there. It was in an entry, so this is public. By Snuff Leadership, basically was like, knock it off to their own guys that kind of did this, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, for an alliance, even as alliance of biggest Snuff, to go through and scout all these out and map all these in Tripwire or Siggy every day, and then to get them in a format that's easy to use takes a ton of time and effort. Whereas when they're public, you can just use them and you can travel as you wish. So the amount of effort that it took alliances to make all this stuff themselves when they weren't public is a pretty big undertaking. So I could understand why, a few selfish people, ruin the whole barrel of apples for everybody.
Well, but thanks to Katia and Signal Cartel, they didn't take it personally, it looks like, and they just pulled it off, fixed it, and then put it back, which they didn't have to do. They could have kept those off and said, if you guys are going to mess with us, we're just going to close this service to everybody. But you didn't do that. Why not, Katia?
Well, it's very much who we are, right? We consider ourselves a service corporation to all of New Eden. And we realize, of course, that, not only do the hunted use and our resources and services, but the hunted or the hunters, do as well. I mean, we provide our service equally to no matter your play style. So we respect that and we honor that. And no hard feelings. I mean, as I said to some folks behind the scenes, we would rescue you yesterday, we'll rescue you today, we will rescue you tomorrow, no matter what you do to us today. That's just not who we are. We don't point fingers, we don't place blame. We realize this whole was our issue. We took responsibility for it. And we have done our best to plug that hole and put it back out there again for everyone to enjoy equally.
Yeah, so you really live that neutrality then.
We do, and the credo is very much the core of who we are, and it's really interesting sometimes because we'll get folks that join the corp that are new, and sometimes they'll kind of test those boundaries, right? They'll see how far they can push neutrality, and they'll toe right up to the line, and we'll have credo discussions internally on various things and new mechanics that come to the game, and how should we approach those and handle those. But I assure you that if you do not understand the core concept of the credo, you will be kicked. It is who we are. It's what our reputation is built upon. And you just have to live and breathe it. So
no tolerance for Han Solo shot first.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a pretty solid zero tolerance that if you get into PvP action, we do reviews of those actions, write up reports. If we found that you shot first, you might get a warning. We may kick you. It just depends. If you pod, that's an automatic kick. That's a big no-no. You do not pod. We do defend ourselves. So there is a lot of misconception out there that we're pacifist, and we're not. And some folks have found out the hard way that we can blow you up just as easily as you can blow us up.
Nice. Well, let's look on the other side of that issue, though. You do a public service. You map Thera bookmarks. That helps a lot of people. But everything that helps one person hurts somebody else. So what are your thoughts on too much intelligence, too much free intelligence, and providing a service that would otherwise tax these groups that are hunters by making them scan, by making them hire book wormhole guys that like that kind of gameplay to find those wormholes. Like, what do you think of that part of the equation?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever put much thoughts into that aspect of it. I know we have our naysayers for sure. Like you said, there are folks that think we make it too easy for Thera, right? But because it is the crossroads of wormhole space, it has connections everywhere, right? And so they do think we make it too easy. At the same time, I think the benefit outweighs that, because we are encouraging folks to go out and explore, right? So we're making it easy for you to get into that hub and go from there. And of course, from after you get out of Thera and into wormhole space and everything, I mean, we no longer are providing a service that would benefit you there. So I would just like to think that we're enablers. We help people make that first step if they probably otherwise wouldn't.
You're kind of the original filament, right? Because with your information, you can come into Thera and exit and be in a totally different part of space on the map.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah, that's a very interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with this series. Talking in Stations has helped out a little bit with it, but this is very much Katia's creation with Mark, and their some camera work by Abby Rova, who's a part of TIS. So we look forward to watching this with you and with everybody else. I think it's going to be a really, really, a big hit with EVE players.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. It's good talking to you, Katia. Good luck. We'll see you at the Snowball fight.
Thanks.
All right. So next I'm going to bring in Cosmo Estidal. And for those that don't know Cosmo, he's here now. How are you doing, Cosmo?
Hey, I'm good.
Good. It's nice to meet you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? We know that you're a rogue miner, but tell us about like who what corporation you're in and what alliance you work with, and that sort of thing.
I'm a proven Kybernaut and industrial revolutionist. I'm part of Breadfleet, which lives in Potchman, and we're part of the Toast Alliance. A lot of bread puns to go with that.
All right, so a mining patch just hit, and let's just say Rorqual pilots were not real happy about it. Barge pilots were real happy about it. Miners in general seem to have settled into it and kind of like it from our perspective, the people that we talk to, the people that talk to us, which is a diversity of people across the board in game styles. But you are taking it a step further. And why don't you explain what your gameplay is these days?
Well, the main way I make money is to steal ore from nullsec. And I can do that because I don't really live in one place. I live from Majorca. And then I have a character that can do the work. So I'll filament Majorca out to nullsec. Basically, look through the whole region, just see what I can exploit and steal. The main thing's Macoxit, but I also steal ice for one of my structures that I have.
What do you mean by steal?
Well, we don't own the sovereignty, and they put in work to like make their system good with the ores, and I just kind of come in and take it.
So you're picking fruit off some farmers' trees.
Basically, yeah.
I love this guy.
So if they've logged in and your system's cleared out of all the good ore, you know what's happened.
You know what this reminds me of, Kenneth, Nick? It reminds me of, and this is tragic, but I saw a killer whale documentary where the killer whales shepherd off one of the children whales, the gray whales that they're trying to target, and all they do is eat like the whale's tongue. That's all they eat, and the rest of the carcass just is wasted. And because apparently it's very nutrition rich for the orcas and that sort of thing. Super sad. Sorry about that. But it just shows me like they only came for the really important part and everything else is just kind of left behind.
Yeah, I consider the
people
more
wake
fight
up.
a good bit, and then all the rest is pretty worthless to me. So
Yeah, people wake up and find that the good stuff's gone. Then, huh?
yeah, and I use the maximum waste lasers, get the highest yield possible. Because when it's not your ore, you don't really care if you're burning a load of it.
So we looked at some numbers, right, Cosmo? Together, we looked at some numbers about what a nullsec guy could expect to make with a barge fleet. And Kenneth, do you know what like a 3-man, 2 barges, 1 orca, or could make in a system per hour?
Yeah, I mainly deal with cubic meters per hour. I can tell you that. And then depending on whether you're mining Mercoxit or Arcanor,
Right.
it's massively different. The Celestes, probably not saying that right. The German website has the moon ore breakdown and the profit for both raw and refined ore. And you could multiply it out from that pretty easily.
Yeah, we asked somebody to do that, and we came up with essentially there was like 4 or 5 different pairings. Whether you had A crystals, B crystals, if you had an orca boosting or not boosting, and all that kind of stuff. What did it come out to? Do you remember, Cosmo?
I think it was looking at like Arcanor and Bistot. It was around like 20 mil an hour per barge. That's what
it was like 11 to 20 million. Sorry, billion. No,
Million.
11 to 20 million, definitely million per hour. That's what they were doing. And how's that compared to what you do by ninja mining and just taking the best parts?
I mean, when I take the best parts, I don't have boosts, they're just in my prospect, but it's still around like 120 mil an hour. Just because I'm just on the Mercoxit.
Right. So you're getting the good stuff and you're pulling 120 an hour compared to 20, which is pretty nice. So how do you do it? How many alts do you need? Like, tell us the technique.
I only have 2 alts. So I have one alt that's basically my station. She sits in the orca. And then I have one alt that does all the work. So he goes out and steals the Mercoxit. And I have a load of other ships in the orca, so I can swap to combat ships with PvP, or I run nullsec sites when I want to chill out in bombers as well.
So you have a little fleet inside the orca. And how does it not get scanned down and killed, though?
Well, the orca just sits cloaked in system most of the time. The only really dangerous bit is when you're swapping ships or like offloading your ore, so that's where you got to like properly concentrate. And also, there's a bit of a rhythm to it. You've got the 15-minute cloak timer. So normally you want to steal and fill your, say, a prospect before the cloak timer runs out. Because I'm not always in. I'll still mine even if there's people in local, so I'll kind of just fight against them and steal it anyway, like from under the nose.
What's the ship maintenance bay on an orca? 400,000?
Yeah, 400,000. So
how many frigates can you put in there?
I have
7 or 2 cruisers.
Yes,
right. I know the cruisers are 150 each, but that's what I was wondering about. So you could have quite a few replacement ships too, in case you get killed. You could still come back, and as long as your orca lived, you could still come back and grab another frigate and keep mining.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't have replacements because I basically have ships for everything you can do in nullsec. So I'll have like a covert ops. I have a ship for ESS, a ship for salvaging, and like ninja looting. I have 3 bombers so I can run all the nullsec sites, and then I have an endurance and prospect for Mercoxit and ice. So
nice.
Basically, the whole range of activities I can do when I'm out.
Do you use the Mercoxit rig? Oh wait, that's only a medium rig, so you would have to have a barge for that.
Yeah. So for the expedition frigates, it's a modulated deep core minor 2s, which is a weird module because it's the minor 2s and the deep cores put together in one module, which is different to the barges.
Right. It looks like the old school just minor laser, but it takes crystals.
Yeah. So I'm using Tech 2B crystals now, so max waste, but really high yield per second.
Good. Awesome. What's your cycle time, just out of curiosity?
the top of my head, I think it's like 112 seconds, but I have to check that.
Oh, so it's pretty healthy then. You have to stay on grid for 2 minutes then.
Yeah, it mines a lot faster than it used to mine because, like the mercoxitin crystals in general got a buff. It wasn't really mentioned.
Well, they got a buff from 1.75 to 1.8, so 0.05% isn't really worth mentioning.
I thought they were as low as 1.3 before.
Maybe mercoxit?
I'm pretty sure
I'm not
like,
sure.
the crystals literally got buffed by 60%.
The mercoxit ones may have, but the regular ones didn't.
Yeah, just because the mining yield on the crystals was a lot lower than the other crystals before, but now it's been brought in line with the rest of the crystals.
Oh,
so when
nice.
you combine that buff with the B crystal buff, it's quite... My prospect's basically mining double what it was before the patch.
Oh, nice.
And it's even better in Potchfin. Got the new crystals there.
That's right. Potchfin has changed too. I want to stay on ninja mining though, because I think it's fascinating gameplay. And it brings to mind that we think of mining as a static activity where you have a certain formula. It used to be, well, it's changed over the years, but in recent years, it was the Rorqual out there mining with its drones and pulling in a ton. That is now yielded to, with this new patch, the barge is back as the preferred miner, and so you have multiple barges with a boosting ship. But you're going in a totally different direction. You're like running around, infiltrating space that doesn't belong to you, or you're not patrolling that space, and you're taking the good stuff and then taking off before anybody knows you were there.
Yeah, I kind of see it like, why would you mine if you're not mining the most valuable? Or
Yeah.
I tried high sec mining recently for the first time, and I was like, why would anyone do this? It's like 9 mil an hour. You can make more in adventure and Potchfin. So why would you do this?
Yeah. Well, this is excursion or expedition mining. What do you call it?
I call it mining expeditions. I know that has another connotation for one of the events, but that's what I've always called it. So I'll go out, fill up the orca. When I started, I didn't have the orca, so I kind of had a progression. So my first progression was a miasmos and an endurance, and I started on ice. So I'd fill the miasmos up, come back. Once I made enough money, it turned into an orcator, and then from then it turned into an orca. When I first got the orca, I put insurance on it, but it lasted so long that it ran out.
Yeah.
So I haven't put the insurance back on it.
What do you think, Ken? It's kind of wild, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's freaking awesome that someone's figured out a way to do this. I didn't know that the orca is one of those tweeners, right? Sometimes it's the capital, sometimes it isn't. So the fact that it can take filaments is pretty cool. I'd like to know kind of how much ISK you could make if you went into one of the shattered wormholes and tried to mine in there.
That's another thing that I do, actually. I have a load of C13 seeded, and I'll bring a porpoise and an endurance and fill that up. Because it's basically infinite ice in there, massive ice fields.
Is there any gas in those?
I think they can spawn gas sites too.
They can or can't?
I think they can.
That's another thing you might want to look at. Gas is going to be once capital production kicks in, gas is going to be a pretty big bottleneck there.
Yeah, like especially when the compression comes, I'm just going to be able to sit in that wormhole and get as much gas or ice as I want.
Exactly.
That's going to be one of the things I do. Well,
right now, per the original dev blog, gas compression was only going to come to Rorquals. But I'm sorry. Moon compression was only coming to Rorquals. Yeah, gas was going to be everything. Yeah, so you will be able to compress the gas, assuming it follows the same paradigm.
Yeah, exactly. Same with ice. You'll be able to sit there for a lot longer. like 600 blocks of ice.
I assume that'll buff wormhole miners as well, and Poshman. No, wormhole
logistics. The wormhole logistics will get easy because, like he's saying, if he's in a shattered, instead of doing all that and taking the orca in and out, leave the orca in and run the miasmos back and forth, and carry stuff out. You won't collapse the hole as easy, and you can stay mining longer.
Well, I mine in C13, so it's like a frigate hull. So I can only really bring in the porpoise and the endurance for that one. But another big change in Potrin, we're also going to get compression, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be like a mass renaissance of mining ships coming in when that change happens.
Well, this is like, okay, you're a small scale guy. You're one guy with 2 alts, and you're doing pretty well for yourself in just doing this kind of stuff. And you have variations on it, shattered wormholes and Poshfin and other stuff. Can you imagine if Goonswarm went back to being like, a locust type operation where all these guys, this was the new hotness and this is what they trained into? What would prevent a group at scale to implement this all over the place? I'm talking about Horde copying that as well, and whoever else, Fraternity.
It does kind of get more dangerous the more people you have, and I'm leveraging Potrin to keep myself safe. That's like where I live. And,
I know. I think I know why. Because the organization, whether it be Goons or Horde or whoever, they can't tax this, right? This is not taxable income to them.
Right, because they're not mining their moons.
And they're not refining in their stations.
They could still look at your personal ledger. But yeah, if you're not mining in their space, yep.
The thing is, like, Potrin's very hard for anyone to control. Like, Goons basically got kicked out. They couldn't hack it. The one big force that's in there now is Horde. But you can't really control the region.
I thought Fraternity was in there. Are they not?
I think most of their stations are destroyed now.
Oh, wow. So only Horde is in Poshman, more or less?
Yeah, they're quite a big force there. But I don't know, if you live in Pochvin, you know how it's like a rhythm. So you've got the hunters hunting like all the salvages, and then you'll have a big OBS fleet come by, and everyone hides. And then when they leave, everyone comes back out, and the hunting continues. It's
like an ocean or a coral reef or whatever.
Yeah, it's like an ebb and flow. So the big fleets don't really care about like the hunters. That makes sense. They're trying to do the big sites instead.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's terrific that you're innovating in the mining sector as well, especially after a change. So I imagine you like the changes that have come through.
Yeah, I very much like the changes. Just because all my mining is a lot faster. I just like the fact denying resources a bit quicker as well, burning a lot more of their ore. And we're hopefully going to be running fleets to like drop on people's R64 and stuff like that. Burn that down too.
And you're liking the idea of compression coming?
Definitely. I can compress already, but I use like old technology. I'll put it that way.
I got it. Well, that's super interesting. Now, I heard a little rumor that the Orca can also work as a battle Orca doing level 4 missions. Have you heard that?
So the same Orca I use as my suitcase, fly around. I've been running level 4s and also the high sec event sites. I've been doing that in the Orca too.
Do you have to run the Indy core for that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, you need to siege up.
Yeah, that's what I thought. In order to get the big drone bonus, you have to use the Indy core. But in high sec, that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it makes your drones a lot tankier. So for like these event sites where I kind of use the AIs. The AI loves to aggro the drones, but I kind of use that against them. So I have a repper on the Orca that heals my drones, so they just kind of tank for me. So it actually makes the site easier.
Yeah, I love it. What else are you doing? Sounds like you're very creative.
Well, the big thing about my playstyle was mobility. So 1 minute I'm stealing nullsec. One of my mates is like, "Oh, there's a gate camp in Potchman. I'll just filament in, change ships, and I'm helping them." Do you know what I mean? I can be there with like drop of a hat. One example was I was mining null. They were like, "We're going to go on an endurance event fleet." So I filamented in, went through a wormhole, and I was there with them. So there's not really much travel when you live in Potchman. It's very high mobility.
Yeah. Now, Poshman mining, is it a thing or not? Because we've heard a couple things when we did the live shows. Somebody, it was Murray that said, like, no, mining's not happening. You'll get killed in Poshman. And then I hear from other people that Poshman mining is really hot right now.
Yeah, depends if you live there. If you live there, you know how to mine. It's completely different to other places.
Yeah, if you have protection, those ores are quite valuable. The biggest thing is it's getting them out.
Right. Again, compression will help that, I suppose, later on.
Yes.
So Poshman has its own mining, its own type of ore, its own type of asteroids, and they didn't have lasers before this patch, but now they do.
Yeah, so we used to use miner 2s or just the normal strip miners, but mainly it's miner 2s because if you mine in a barge in Potchman, you're probably going to die.
It's the crystals that they didn't have before. You could use the strips. It was just unbonused.
So if you combine the fact that you can now use crystals, plus we got the B crystal, it's a huge increase to the mining amount compared to before. And also
those are sites, right? So they respawn?
Yeah, so they're a bit different than the rest of the game. We kind of called it dynamic ore, because you've got your 29 systems in Potchman. When you clear out site, that site will respawn somewhere in the triangle, in the 29 systems. If you're mining a region out, say, part of the triangle, it'll normally push all the ore sites slightly the other side. So you've got to travel around.
But the beauty is now you need one crystal, and you can mine anywhere in those 29 systems with one single crystal.
Yeah, exactly. And the rocks are massive, so there's no reason why you should be using A crystals. Always use B. We don't. Yeah, there's that much ore. You don't care about burning it, and then it's just going to respawn somewhere else. So,
and that's part of the reason those crystals were put in. If you have a more or less infinite resource, or the waste isn't as a big deal to you, get what you can. That's 25% increase in yield is the yield increase for the 20% duration decrease. So that's a significant amount of ISK. If you're making 100 million an hour, now you're making 125 by going to that crystal. So it's considerable.
I'd say compared to like people mining the high sec, you're making 5 times more or something, even in like a venture. But when you factor in the crystals, it's pretty crazy. And you can get all the minerals apart from Mexilon and Pyrite, which we normally get from J-Space.
Right, the good stuff.
Yeah.
So Poshman is good money if you can get it, if you know how to survive there.
So I would recommend Endurances and a Porpoise.
Is that the secret sauce?
That is that's the safest way to mine. Can I explain like the expedition frigates a bit?
Kenneth had a question, I think.
Well, I'm just wondering, the Orca as a tweener, is the Orca allowed in Potchfin?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a subcapital pretty much across the board now, but Rorquals obviously can't be. So the biggest boost you can get is an Orca, unless someone has a pre-Potchfin Rorqual still there.
Yeah, there might be some people with that.
I would imagine that's got a gigantic freaking target painted on it.
Yeah, so we don't normally use the Orca for actual boosting, unless we had like a big fleet, put bubbles on all the gates, that type of thing, locked it down. But the fact that it could turn into a battle orca now, we're thinking of using orcas as like combat ships now. That's kind of our thinking.
At least you can replace them. Is my point. You can build orcas there, whereas you cannot build a Rorqual there. If there's one there, it's a legacy one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, tell us about your ship combo.
Right, so there's kind of nuances between the Prospect and the Endurance. The Prospect mine's slightly faster because it's got the 2 lasers. It's got the covert cloak. So if you set it up right with like 3-second align time, pretty much nothing can catch you. Say if like a Loki decloaks next to you, you make sure you've got a planet or a moon selected and just warp off before they can even start locking you. The only ship that can catch prospects is tackle bombers. And that's why I use an Endurance, because an Endurance will just turn around and kill the bomber. So Endurance is basically the safest ship in the game for mining. And they're not just for ice, they mine ore too. That's like their big misconception. So if you've got Endurances and a Porpoise, you're pretty safe. And there's also other tactics.
Let's hear them.
Has anyone heard of Higgs rig mining?
Yes.
Yes.
So when
But explain it, please, for people who haven't.
When your ship has a Higgs rig, normally they use it in J space for rolling wormholes. It makes your ship very heavy, which means if you align to something, it's basically like you're still. So you're drifting very slowly, but it means you can always be aligned out if anything decloaks, and even if you're in like an orc or a porpoise, you can just instantly warp off. Another thing you need in Potchman specifically is mobile jump units, because all the ore sites are dead space, so you can't warp to a rock. You can only really warp to 0 on the site. You can't warp around inside the site. So you've got to use a mobile jump unit on your Higgs rig ships to get out to the rock. And then you're pretty much safe there. So that'll allow you to use barges. The only dangerous part is when you're warping into the site.
And you just have the system locked down before you do that, basically.
Because we're a small group, we don't normally have the system locked down. We just use tactics to be like sneaky and.
But the bigger groups would have the system in lockdown.
Yeah, but it's very hard to lock down a system because, like, I talked about the big OBS fleets roaming by. You've got like maybe 20 battleships, and they'll just come through and destroy all your bubbles, and they're ready for fighting. Like, people that run OBSs are used to fighting other big fleets.
OBS, break out what OBS stands for.
So then OBS, it's an Operation Flashpoint. So it's OBS or OF. They're a bit like incursions in Potchman. So you need around 50 battleships. They're out of the way.
So
it's a fleet ratting site.
So basically, you're saying the fleets that are coming to rat those sites are ready for combat, and they can cut through your.
Yeah, so if you set through a bubble camp, eventually one of these fleets is going to come around, destroy all your bubbles, and you've got to set up again. That's why Potchman's quite a hard place to lock down. And everyone's used to flying cloaky ships and being like guerrilla style. So,
and anyone can filament into any system at any time. So you're just sitting there, you have the system locked down, and someone hits a filament somewhere, and bam, they just show up in the system, and nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, bam, you got an Ikitursa fleet in system there, destroying all you guys.
Can you do multiple ships, like a small fleet, into Potchman together, or do those filaments allow that?
Yeah, up to 15.
So a gang basically could come in, not just one guy.
Exactly. And you can't stop that. And there's no way to bubble them. They just show up in a random spot. I think it's like 20 AU of a planet or something. But I mean, there's no way that you could possibly, and it's random. When you hit the filament, you don't even know what system you're going to.
Well, you say it's random.
Well,
we have
are there
clade.
strategies?
We have clade filaments. So Svarog, Peru, and Veles. So if you have a target system, you pretty much get within 4 jumps at most.
Okay, but it's random.
It's random within a certain area.
Sure.
But the idea is you can't like close that wormhole like you could a regular wormhole or whatever.
You can close it, but there will always be an entrance in K-space to get back in.
But no, a filament, you can't close a filament because it doesn't exist, right?
Oh, you mean...
What I mean is you can't defend against a filament because it doesn't exist until they land. Whereas a wormhole, if it pops up, you could identify it and roll it and close it.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. You can't stop fleets coming in. We normally say if you can survive in Parchment, the rest of the game's kind of easy, apart from wormholes.
If you can survive there, you can survive anywhere.
I go to Nullsec to chill out. There's too much action. When you're in Parchment, it's like non-stop action, so sometimes I just like to relax.
It's really coming into its own, isn't it?
It's like
at first it was like a weird little, stepbrother in the basement kind of thing, but then now it's like a handsome young man.
Now you live there, right?
Yeah, I live there.
Are the seagulls still a problem, or has that pretty much been solved?
No, they got rid of. You have to be in the same fleet with the highest damage to get the payment now.
Okay.
So it works like it does in high-sec incursions. However, now you have basically the seagulls have basically turned into like little guerrilla fleets that will destroy your obs fleet. So there's tactics to like break up your fleet, and yeah.
Okay, but that's PvP. I'm good with that. The leeching and seagull thing, the CSM was trying to get that squashed as fast as possible, because that's just crapola right there. I mean, yeah.
Wait. What's crapola? Was CSM trying to squash
seagulls?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Seagull is just someone that flew into the site, and they would burn out in an interceptor 150 kilometers, so you couldn't kill them, and all they would do is tag one NPC and sit there, and they could even cloak. And then when you went from the first room to the second room, killed the boss, they still got a portion of the payout, and they weren't even in the boss room. So
I would like to know, it was mainly a lot of the big groups that couldn't defend against that tactic, but there were ways to stop it. And it kind of incentivized you to find the site quick, get on before there was a load of seagulls. And when you're on an OBS, because it's dead space, I don't think it works like this anywhere else in the game. If you put a bubble, it won't. You won't land at the edge of the bubble. You'll actually be dragged into the center of the bubble. So as long as you're on the site first, you could defend against them.
Right, but if you couldn't, you were just screwed. So, But yeah, either way, it got squashed. It's not a thing anymore. And hey, if they come in at PvP and want to fight, that's completely different, because then you can defend yourself, you can defend against them, they can kill you, you can kill them. But the way that they were working in there, they tag one NPC and burn a couple 100 kilometers out and cloak. You may not even know that they're there, and then at the end they would get a portion of the payout. And there may be 10 or 15 of them in one site. You had no idea.
Yeah, it was a bit easy.
Sneaky.
And like he said, if you got there first and you could set up, then yes. But if they were already there and you didn't know, you didn't find out until you killed everything and got next to nothing for payout, and they took the lion's share.
Isn't that emergent gameplay? Like, don't you consider that like?
No, that's just no.
It was a little bit too easy.
And there's no counter, right? If they're there and get a shot on and cloak, you'd never know that they're there, and they just took your ISK.
I would say the counter was just speed. So if you had fast scouts, get your fleet in fast, that was like the counter back in the day.
Yeah, it sounds like the counter was difficult, even if it existed.
Well, if you were U.S. time zone and guys put their stuff in there in EU, you'd have no idea until you just got nothing for the payout.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of a small guy being able to leech off big empires that aren't patrolling well enough and that sort of thing. This is a little different, but I recall the attachments to pauses that you could attach to them, and it would siphon off some of the siphons. Actually, they would siphon off some of the moon minerals that were being mined in that moon.
But you could kill those too.
Right. And you could see them. They weren't cloaked or whatever.
Exactly.
Well, now groups are, instead of siphoning off the site, they just siphon off the loot from the ships that they're killing on these sites.
Right.
Because, small ships can be a massive hassle. And because it's quite a hard site, you can manipulate it so the fleet will die. There's been a lot of times where the whole fleet's been wiped just because of like a small gang. It's not safe space. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, security by obscurity. I love your game style. It's I love the idea of an expedition. I love the idea of the small guy being able to work by himself. I do like that because a lot of players need to play solo and have something to do. And the fact that you chill out in nullsec, which cracks me up.
Yeah, it's not as dangerous as people make out. I'll tell people that. Like a few days ago, I was mining, I think 2 jumps from 1 DQ, but they kind of didn't notice me, so I just cleared the system.
While you're there?
I thought that was funny.
So you went to relax, and you're like, might as well take some asteroids.
Like when the war was happening, what's it? The system behind the 1 DQ gate, I landed there once with the Orca. And I kind of just had a chat and left because I thought it was a bit too dangerous.
You drove your Winnebago into a war zone?
But there was only one guy in local, so they were all next door, I guess, on the gate.
Yeah. They were holding the gate because there was a huge force on the other side of it. That's hilarious. All right. Well, Cosmic, love it. It's awesome. You have any more tricks? Maybe we'll bring you back another time when you're full of stories.
Probably do. I don't know if I can tell you them all, but
yeah. Well, all right. Well, this again, I think, Kenneth, this really points to the idea that the mining patch has helped players that play differently than, say, being a Rorqual pilot, and you can make great wealth doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the Rorqual got nerfed. Got it. Across the board, just flat nerf.
And that hurts.
But the play styles it opened up with the frigates, the extra crystals, Pochvin, compression is coming. It's not here yet. But if you kind of think outside the box a little bit, the opportunities are there. You just kind of have to think about them and make some.
I hope there's a lot more. I hope there's going to be a lot more prospects flying about stealing everyone's McCoxit. And if the market crashes, then I think I've done a good job.
All right. Well, thanks again, Cosmic Estidal. Appreciate you stopping by and visiting.
No worries.
If you want, you can hang out with us for the rest of the show. We're just going to go through some news, or if you have to go, you can take off too. Either way.
I can stay.
All right, cool. Chime in if you see something.
Gotcha.
All right, let's move on to the news that's happening right about now, actually. 2100, not now, 2100, my bad. Commander A9 is putting on the Luminaire Snowball fight, the 8th edition. So you want to be in the system of Luminaire, which is near the center of the map in Galente space. I believe it's Essence, and that's the region. Get there by 2100, and you will, I believe, be supplied with snowballs and whatever you need to get into that big snowball fight. Nick, do you know anything about that?
Actually, I've already got 2 characters chilling out over there waiting for it to start. So, yeah, I already flew over to Luminaire because it was only 8-9 jumps from where I normally hang out. So, yeah, loaded up some of my, the gifted festival launchers. I actually took fireworks in addition to snowballs just because you can, and have some fun with it. You hit me with the snowball, I'll shoot a firework at you.
I think there's also a requirement for this winter Nexus to throw snowballs at people, right?
Yeah, it's one of the, I don't want to say lower level, but it's one of the first few award points for is tossing snowballs at each other.
Cool. All right, guys. Commander 9 set that up. That's a snowball fight in Luminaire. It's called Luminaire Snowball Fight, the 8th edition, and it's taking place today at 2100 Eve time. So make your way there now as you listen to the rest of the show live. All right. Let's get into some player news. Well, I guess Snowball Fight is player news since it's player created. But as far as combat out there, let's see what's going on. Brave expands to Placid. As of December 17th, Brave has begun to take control of Placid Entrance Constellation in Pureblind. Judging by kill boards and the simultaneous nature of the flips, that is the iHubs flipping, this seems to be a coordinated transfer of ownership from toilet paper to Brave.
There's no more flipping. It's right-click, destroy. The new group has to drop one after it's destroyed and then entosis it. So you can't transfer or flip them anymore between alliances. So it has to be a destroy and drop a new one.
And that starts the build-up timer all over again, correct?
Say again?
That starts the build-up timer all over again for upgrades and things you can do with the system.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also destroys all the upgrades that are in there. Whereas before, you could preserve all those upgrades and use a transfer corp and go from alliance to alliance. Now, if a corp owns an iHub and they transfer it to another alliance, that iHub transfers to the executor corp of the original alliance, so they can't take it with them. The only way to transfer solve between alliances now is to right-click destroy, and the new alliance drop an iHub. When you drop an iHub, it's also neutral. You have to entosis it to align it to your new group.
So that used to work differently with a different solve system, but they've made changes to it.
Correct.
Yeah. And so it's more of a friendly, agreed upon transfer of territory rather than flip used to be a different way of thinking about it.
I see it kind of interesting that, Brave, there's taken that particular constellation that's the entry to Placid. The other constellation they have on, literally the other side of Pureblind is one of the two that goes into Lone Trek. So they're kind of, isolating that a little bit. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. All right. So Brave is active up there in Pureblind. And again, Syndicate is actually not controllable. It is NPC space. So you can roam there and live there, but you can't own it. Pureblind, you can. So that's why there's some iHubs to be flipped or put up for Brave. I wonder what they're up to. In other news, Evisctus has called it quits and they are breaking up. I'll read this. We are hearing that there are movings inside of Evisctus. Rumor is reforming into a new alliance. So that's the latest rumor. We don't know the name of the new alliance yet, and we'll follow details as they are provided, keeping an eye on this situation. So, yep, some groups will reform that were from Evisctus. In test news, Test Alliance Please Ignore have deployed to Fatabolis in cooperation with Fire Coalition. The deployment headquarters are in NX5W TAC U. There are some expectations that the deployment will be facing towards Impasse rather than Esoteria, Tenerifis, or Omist. But Test have fielded retributions just today in Esoteria against Army of Mango. The headquarters system of NX is within Titan Bridge range of CFLF TAC P, which is 3 stargates from the Impasse border and 6 stargates from the Esoterian border. So Test is, I don't know, this seems to be, it looks like they're backing up their friends, the Fire Coalition, but at the same time, aren't there usually content deployments right around this time of the year, Kenneth?
Probably. I think a lot of this is just trying to consolidate after the war, make a move, see who moves with you, see who's active, and try and get your core group back together. They've shed a couple groups lately, so getting a move down and finding out who your core is again, and kind of building with them, make a new good cohesive group, and then try and build back your alliance again. It's probably as much of a what's going on here is supporting someone or just getting content this time of year.
That's interesting. So after a war, you kind of want to figure out who's still with you. So you do something and then you see.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, even PL's doing that. We're in LXQ, running fleets 3 or 4 times a day. Tons of people know, hey, let's go tag the ESS and LXQ, and someone will respond fairly quickly. So we're getting quite a few fleets through there, and a lot of it's training too. We've picked up a couple new corps, so you need to go through the onboarding process, and PL does things differently from other corps, and get everyone up to speed, new doctrines, how we fly this or that, or how we do our comms, this kind of stuff. That way, when it's time to deploy again, you're ready to go, rather than trying to onboard a new corp or new people and have everyone kind of figure it out in the heat of battle. Whereas now it's kind of more chill, and everyone makes a more cohesive team.
All right. A little more news here. FI.RE Coalition, we talked about Test joining them or supporting them. The clashing continues between FI.RE Coalition and Wrecking Crew. Yesterday, the two sides clashed as FI.RE continues their effort to take space in Catch region, while Wrecking Crew ensures the attempt is met by a concrete wall that denies meaningful progress thus far. In case Wrecking Crew successfully defends iHubs, achieving the strategic objective, with FI.RE eventually turning around and leaving the field after the last minor clash attempt. Last night's fighting resulted in fairly even attrition, although Wrecking Crew came out on top of the ISK war by a small margin. We have a bookmark. We have a battle report for that. If you could put that up, Nick. The situation in the south and southwest of the map is likely to continue to be pretty volatile for the foreseeable future. Now, these guys have been fighting since, this has been a long war, if you want to call it a war, but they've been fighting since like spring or summer. Maybe spring. So this is already like a 6-7 month war, maybe more. No love lost between Wrecking Crew and FI.RE Coalition. In fact, I believe the people who were really pushing this war the most were the corporation or the Alliance Dreadbomb. And I don't know what condition Wrecking Crew's in, but I've heard there could be some volatility in that group as well. I don't know like how strong they are right now, or how together and unified they are. Should look into that. All right, here we go with the game news now. This is really good stuff that's come out, obviously, in the last week. But on top of it all is this year in reviews. Have you guys seen your year in reviews? It's My Eve 2021. Actually, why don't you describe what it is, Kenneth, the year in review?
So it started, I believe, in 2019. They did it last year and they did it again this year, and they kind of changed the way that they did it. But basically, in 2019, it was a cumulative video like this year. Last year, it was per pilot. But they basically go through the database and collate all of your stats for different things. And it's different for kind of different people depending on what you did more of. But it lists the number of kills you had, the amount of ISK that you have destroyed, the number of times you've been potted. It also like your top damage to citadels, a few other things. And then it's a little bit about science and manufacturing. It goes into the number of jobs that you've done, the number of items you've manufactured, the amount of ISK that you have manufactured. And then it goes into science jobs, like the number of copies you've made, the number of inventions that you've done, this kind of stuff. And then it it has some market stuff, the amount of ISK that you've made from the market. And then I think it gives like a number for the total amount of ISK over the year that you've gained or lost. Some people, depending on how that goes, I know mine's way off because most of mine's all corp driven as opposed to player driven. So if you do a lot of stuff through the corp, it'll look like you lost a lot of ISK, but your corp actually gained a lot of ISK. But this is a player thing. But if you have your own corp, then it kind of muddles that line a little bit. But nevertheless, it's about as accurate as CCP can make it. And then it goes per email. So how many ever accounts you have on a certain email, they all get lumped together. So that's kind of how they lump a video together.
That's cool. So if you have 3 accounts on one email, 3 accounts on another, you can make it so all 6 accounts are counted together as one accomplishment.
No. So if you have 3 accounts on one email and 3 accounts on another email, you would get 2 videos, one for each email.
So it's the email. I thought for some reason that you could combine emails, like that they'd come to that point.
I don't think so, not yet. I know there's a thing in there that if you go to your account, you can log on to Facebook in your account, and they might be able to aggregate them that way. I'm not sure, but I know that it's pretty much, and they consider your main to be whoever has the highest SP amongst all the characters or pilots on a single email. So if you have 3 accounts on one email and 3 accounts on another email, whoever the highest SP pilot is per email, that is your main as far as the videos are concerned and where you're going to find the video.
Is there a way to force certain categories to show up? There's a lot of mine that I want to see in this.
Last year you could. This year you couldn't because it was an aggregate. However, now that the new mining changes have come through, next year I'll try and advocate for them putting the mining stats in as well, because I think a lot of people would really like to see that. And I'm not sure why it wasn't in this year. I haven't really asked or anything. But that's a stat I'd really like to see.
Yeah, mine gave the total number of M3 mined. I've got that on mine.
Oh, did it? Okay, so maybe if you mined enough, then you got that stat. Because I have 4 different emails, 4 different videos, and the stats that show up on mine are slightly different depending on what those different groups of accounts did.
Yeah, I haven't got the mining, but I've got like the market that kind of shows me how much I sold from the mining. If that makes sense.
Yep, there you go. That's at least that's a good reference for you anyway.
All right, I'm going to show mine, and then you guys can show me yours out there. What I want to do is see as many people's videos as I can, because this really tells you where they are in the world and what they're doing, where their time is going, and really at what scale they're operating on. So Kenneth is off the charts, along with a few other guys. Mine, I think, will be a little bit more realistic because I do less than he does in the game. But I want to see where you guys are later on. So send me your My Eve at 2021 or My Eve 2021. Let's see this one here. If you could zoom in on it, Nick, I'm going to play mine, and I'm not 100% sure what's in here. So let's check it out.
Welcome to your end of year celebration. Where better to have a party than at the heart of G2 4. Let's look at your best bits from 2021.
That's a good party. Wow.
I guess we know who's buying tonight. It's been an
it's
eventful
you.
year with many new Capsuleers welcome thanks to EVE Academy, a fresh new player experience, the Epic Game Store launch, native Mac release, plus big changes to mining and industry. It's also been an exciting
you
time
lost
for community
42
thanks to the
billion
return of
for
the
the
Alliance
year.
tournament, Fanfest 2022, and who knows
didn't know
what
how
else
that
on the horizon.
But then
let's
it
not
tells you
forget,
you're
this is
buying the
about you.
drinks.
Yeah, totally. No way. That guy's buying.
Yeah, I do love that.
Oh, get in there. Definitely a high-sec player. Even a DJ.
Oh, see, I don't have the jumps by security on mine.
Potted 9 times.
It's a small print at the end.
That video is so much fun, isn't it? That's amazing.
How do you share your screen? I just have a static image. I'm not going to show my whole video. I just want to show the one screen.
Sure. Down, there's a video. Sorry, next to your video button, there's a screen.
Okay, there we go. Did it work,
It's just silly numbers.
Nick?
Yeah, you disgust me, man.
You are the manufacturing in Eve, basically.
I think, if you apply yourself next year, you might be able to bring those numbers up. These are a little low, a little embarrassing, so but you can do better, man.
And that's only one. If you add them all together, I'm a little over 3 trillion.
I used to like him.
Yeah. All right, top 1%er. And there are we've seen other ones that people have top percent, and it's just amazing what people get up to in destruction numbers and fleets that they've been on. I think this is really strong reinforcement of a job well done or room for improvement that CCP provides players at the end of the year. It's a great idea. Yeah, so I am negative 42 billion. That's true.
But again, the way that they calculate some of that stuff, you just gotta take some of it with a grain of sand.
That 42 billion went into a bunch of buys. I'm sure it went into a bunch of buys right before the production changes in the spring. So in actuality, it's good that I am negative because I did a ton of investment and now those investments have doubled or, whatever. So I just need to sell those. And next year I'm just going to sell it all and it'll be a stellar year. Yeah. Kenneth is in the trillions and that's just 1 year. You can imagine he's been doing this a while too. So I don't want to think about it.
For the people who haven't gotten it yet, there is a website. It's hosted by Fuzzy Steve right now because he could get it up really quickly. CCP is working on integrating it into their website, and you basically click on the link, log in to your EVE Online account, and it's important, just like I said, within your emails, log into the pilot with the most SP, and it should link you to your video if you don't have it. And hopefully Nick can post that link.
Already did.
Okay, yeah. So there was a couple people that were asking. Go to that link, log in with your account, and hopefully your video should be there.
Yeah, so post those. Those are fun to share. Share them on Twitter. Share them with other players. And if you're a subject matter expert, this is like a great way to say, hey, Matterall, I'd like to be on your show. Here's my credentials. And it's right there. It's all tabulated. So I know, what you've been up to and that sort of thing. I think it's a great way to find people that we normally wouldn't talk to because they might be shy or they might, not want the attention or whatever. But at least we know to consult them afterwards. So it's a great, great way for this channel to know just how good you are at the game and how much experience you have at certain things. And just how terrible you are too, right? Like my video. All right, we can't emphasize that enough. Thank you, Steve, for providing that service. I think CCP is actually going to make it so that more players can get attached to get their video. So that'll probably be happening. But in the meantime, there's Fuzzworks, and I believe CCP Aurora had a lot to do with making that happen as well, right?
Absolutely, she did.
Great community she's community lead for CCP. Okay, some more news from game news. 24-hour proving grounds, 1v1 frigates. So that's going on now. I thought those were assault frigates, not just frigates. Let me look.
This is a new one.
Oh, it's a new one. Okay, so it is just frigates.
Lots of people in Imperial Navy slices.
Those are nice frigates. Okay, also, 'tis the season, right? TIS the season. And I'm going to be running through these fast, Nick. Do you have these links, Nick?
I got them on the screen.
There it is. All right. 'Tis the season is enjoy the holidays and prepare for Fanfest. So that is a blog basically saying happy holidays, but it's also reminding you that Fanfest is coming up. It's still happening. It's happening in the spring. Hopefully, Omicron will be receding by then, and everything will be going as planned. So check out that blog and see what great stuff awaits you in Iceland. By the way, no joke, I asked my son, because, COVID kills vacations, right? You don't get a chance to go out and stuff. And he's like, I want to go to Iceland. And I thought, that's my boy. Well, actually, I thought, like, is he serious? And he does. He wants to go to Iceland. So I'm going to try to find a way to get to FanFest, try to time it right. All right. Winter status update. That came out. Was that this week? God, it seems so long ago.
Yeah, I think it was technically last week, maybe.
Okay. So it was a long time ago.
Hold on. Let me check.
Was that the stream or was that?
No, that was only 4 or 5 days ago.
Came out on the 14th.
It seems like a month.
Yeah, that seems like a long time ago. All right,
Tuesday.
Kenneth, did you see it, Kenneth? I know you were,
I saw the blog. I was on an airplane when it came out, and so I didn't really see the live stream. But I've watched some of it. A lot of it is a rehash, but a lot of it, they kind of go into kind of what's next. And I think that's what most players care about. There are very little specifics in here, as you can imagine. However, I hope CCP, as much grief as they took for putting out the extraction to production and getting it on Sissy early, that's a new thing for them. And I really hope that they can fight through the comments and the beating that they took on that and continue to do it. Because the sooner they get this stuff into player hands, I mean, the CSM is only 10 people. So the more eyes and the more viewpoints that we can collate, the more rounded and better the change can be, or the patch can be for the players. So I hope they stick to that. I hope they get the stuff out early. But right now, I guess they weren't ready to share details. They just kind of gave the outlook of the next, 5 things that they're going to look at. I believe they focused on 5 areas, and they didn't even really give an area that they'd be doing first. Of course, we know compression is a leftover, so that I would imagine will be looked at fairly quickly. And then there's a few other things, like the Winter Nexus event has some of the new capital sites in it. And I don't know if they're kind of beta testing them or whether they'll be a little bit different or what, but those, starting with the crab and moving on, have iterated fairly quickly and CCP has shown that they can iterate on those and expound on them at the same time. I would still love to see a site where at the very end you have to lance or bosun with a Titan, something that you have to aim, not just a single shot. But I think that would be really cool. The rewards would have to make up for having a Titan out in space, but I still think that would be a pretty cool sight to have at the end. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I still think it'd be cool.
Could I just, when they look at compression, are they also looking again at the expedition frigates?
Okay, so I think what CCP has officially said is when they look at compression, they're going to look at the porpoise again. I personally have said that I would always like to have the porpoise and the expedition frigates and the Venture be like your small gang, jump into a shattered wormhole, mine gas or whatever for the day, and then get out. So I will advocate for kind of a glance over of the frigates along the way, but I don't think anything's been necessarily promised yet other than compression and the porpoise.
Just because there was some cool changes that would come in, like being able to sino onto like an ice field with like an endurance. That I hope. I'm kind of sad.
Oh, you broke up there. What was that?
I was just saying, because the endurance was going to get a covert cloak, it was going to be able to sino onto ice fields. I was kind of sad that that was being taken out.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, to be honest, but that's something that we can definitely look at in the future. I don't, that part of it I didn't pay a ton of attention to, so I can't even really speak about it. Not that I could really with the NDA, but I really don't know. I know that was there and then it was lined out, but that's about the extent of my knowledge on that.
Okay. One more thing. Did anyone notice they mentioned Triglavian mining ship?
No. What?
Yes, CCP Ritati was talking about it.
Oh, this is during the Q&A.
Yeah, during the Q&A.
Okay.
We kind of have them in game already in Potchin. They like suck up the sun juice, basically, from the sun.
The sun juice.
So I hope that might come in game at some point.
Well, let's make that clear. So they put out this blog that basically said, hey, here's our winter update. This is what we're focused on until FanFest, these 5 areas. And then they kind of said, hey, there's more miners out there mining more stuff already. So we're seeing a good reaction to the mining changes that just came out. They go on to talk about capitals. They're going to solve some of that stuff. Anyway, you want to read that. That's the roadmap for the next few months. And then they said, we're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to talk to you guys. Submit your questions in the forums, and we'll respond to those questions on air. And so they had that. And what did you think of that? Nick, you saw it with us, right? And Cosmic, did you see that? I know that you were flying, Kenneth, so you probably couldn't see it live.
I did. However, I was still working, so I was like on 2 screens, so I didn't get a chance to pay a great deal of attention to the Q&A portion.
Yeah, I know one thing that kind of puzzled some people is they didn't take questions from Twitch, where it was clearly laid out that they were going to take questions from the forum that were submitted ahead of time, because Carneros had to have time to collate them and figure out which ones were duplicates and which ones they could answer. And, of course, there's some that what I call the whys in Discord. Why did they do this? That's pretty much NDA across the board. You just can't answer the whys. So, kind of filter that out. And then the stuff on Twitch flies by so quick. I miss half those questions anyway. So having them pre-baked off of the forums is much easier for that type of a session. And I think some people were upset about that. But at the end of the day, those type of AMAs are very difficult to run. So I just encourage people to read and understand that it's coming off the forums. And, you also can't answer every question either. So.
Well, I agree with Klotzy here in chat, who says that's not a Q&A, and it kind of isn't a Q&A. It's more of a. So what that is we'll have a Q&A through the forums. We'll give you our answers on stream, and we'll tell you what the answers are to those questions. I don't know if that can be signaled better, but I can see why people were confused about it being a Q&A.
But it's the same. It's selective answering on Q&A on the Twitch stream, because you can't answer every single question on Twitch. I mean, I'm at home now, so I can have Twitch up and see the questions. But I look at the camera, I answer a few things, and stuff scrolls by, and I know there's questions that I missed. I can only answer and see so much. And it's the same way there. At least from what I saw viewing back on it later, that stuff was screaming by. So it was very difficult to even read after the fact when you're watching the video, as opposed to trying to do it live and write down the question before it goes screaming by. Or if you stop I don't even know if you can stop the chat to read a question, and then by the time you get that question answered, you've got 1,000 messages stacked up behind it. I don't know. For me, maybe it's just I'm old. I don't know. I have a hard time following that stuff. It's extremely difficult. And I can't imagine doing a live show and doing that kind of stuff at the same time.
You feel my pain. Yeah, well, it is. I can see that. Yeah. And also the quality of the questions, you really can't ask a really complex question in this format. It's a paragraph, and it's hard to stop chat. It really is. Even if you stop it and it freezes for a minute, somehow it starts going again. So it's very frustrating to try to grab questions, especially off a fire hydrant of questions coming at you. So I imagine they said, you know what? I don't want to look at chat. There's no reason to look at chat if we have questions in our forums, which is our official place of communication. So we'll take those, we'll digest them, make sure that we get good questions that kind of hit, what people really want to know out there, what they're pushing for, and we'll answer those. And that's what the Q&A was about. So that happened, and we did Talking in Stations did a warm-up show, and then we rated them, and then we were rated back after the show, which was really cool of them. And we were able to have an open discussion with more participants and take Q&A and that sort of thing about their, how it went and what they thought about it. So that worked out pretty well too. And during that time, something amazing happened. And we were talking about stockpiles and, KPIs, which are they key productivity indicators or key something?
I think it's performance.
Performance, thank you. Key performance indicators, which basically means goals. That's the business speak for goals. And their goals were to reduce stockpiles. And during our presentation, CCP Psych gave us a chart and then gave us two more, and we put those together, and you're seeing them now on screen. It was amazing. We actually the audience got a look at the stockpiles. More or less, this represents the stockpiles. These are probably minerals, but we're not sure. They're materials. That's all we know. Or at least one of them is a material. And by looking at it, you can see that what they have done has been successful. And there's a couple things I want to talk about here. But Kenneth, what are your thoughts on this chart?
I firmly believe when they said materials that they meant minerals. But if you look, it clearly shows, well, I think it lists the patches or the expansions on there. So you can see exactly when Rorquals came in. But it shows that all the way back to 2015, there were stockpiles in the game. You're never going to eliminate stockpiles. People are going to have them. But as Rorquals Online happened, the stockpiles creeped up to 2 or 3 times what they were for 3 or 4 years prior to that, what you could call an equilibrium value, and they spiked up, and now they're coming back down. Now, are we going to have a new equilibrium? Maybe. Are we going to eventually get back down to the old equilibrium? That's hard to say as well. But the fact is, they did turn the corner. They are coming back down. And as I've said all along, I don't know these numbers, but I do deal in my work in real life with overshoots. And you try and limit the overshoot. When you're trying to get back to an equilibrium, you don't instantly go back to where you think equilibrium will be, because you're just going to overshoot and then oscillate. You want to undershoot a little bit and then see how it kind of steadies out, and then change a little bit from there. And in my work, you're dealing with reactor power. So you don't want to overshoot reactor power and go above and have a trip. In this case, the trip would be another shortage event. You want to come up to, roughly 85, 90%, and then see how the market and the game reacts and slowly climb up to that equilibrium, rather than slamming right up to equilibrium and then having to do something later that you really don't want to do. So minerals are ores being put back in the game, extra gas, extra ice, and we'll see how that settles out. The wastage was to try and mitigate some of that a little bit and try and keep from just a huge spike happening. And so far, from what I'm hearing, that's people are using the B crystals even more than I thought they would be used. So we'll just have to see how it turns out in 6 months or so, how close we get to equilibrium. And then from there, CCP can gauge whether or not to add more or trim a little bit, or maybe we're on a decent path and we got close enough to equilibrium that we can live there for the foreseeable future. You're not keying up.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
All right, never mind. So it looks to me like things were very stable up until 2017.
Till Lifeblood, yep.
And then things started to Lifeblood. Is that when Rorquals came into being? We assume
it was right in that end of 2017, beginning 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Now remember, the Rorqual, when it was introduced, could mine 8 times more than a Hulk at the time. It was crazy. And then
that only lasted a couple weeks until they figured that out.
Right. So that was a mistake. It got fixed really quick, but it was still like 5.5 times a Hulk. And over time, you could ensure their safety, which made them stampable. You could replicate them because you could ensure their safety, and that created a huge distortion that traveled over the next year and a half. Here's the thing. Somebody said, I think it was Reva in TIS Discord, that the Rorqual changes, scarcity, they called it the player term for it. Scarcity was announced and started before 2000, but the stockpiles didn't really go down until 2021. How do you make that timeline make sense? Let me put it this way. Did scarcity not work and only the war made the stockpiles go down?
Well, kind of couple that with the industry change that came in April, and everybody turned a lot of what they had sitting on hand into, let me get these last capitals built. I wonder how much that took into account.
Kenneth? The industry and the ore DNA changes. People couldn't afford to sit on the ore anymore because it was going to become worth a lot less if you were sitting on ore. So you had to reprocess it. Well, then all of a sudden you had these stockpile of minerals, but now dreads and capitals and supers were going to take all this extra stuff. You had basically a month from the blog to the patch to build as much as you can. And you can look at my manufacturing numbers and get an idea of how much I built.
In other words, you took advantage of that time to build.
I certainly wasn't the only one. I can guarantee you that. I mean, the blog came out and the patch was a month later. That's plenty of time to build, a superhuman number of capitals, titans, whatever you need.
Right. Well, when did shortages hit space? Like, when did nullsec lose access to ore, basically?
That was right after I was elected to 15. So I would say it was the fall of last year. Yeah,
this is
fall
new.
of 20.
Wouldn't it have been 2019?
No, it would have been. Oh gosh, I don't know.
We've lost a year in there because I think everybody did.
This is my second year on the CSM. So I was elected in 20 and 21. So, and it happened while I was on CSM. So it
So
had
right
to
about
be,
there.
right, yeah. And so it had to be the fall of 2020.
So can we deduce? Can we then say that? Put it this way: can we then say that the shortages worked? Because that seems to be the apex. That 2020 spring is the apex of the stockpiles.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much do you think? Because I kind of subscribe to it being a combination. Yes, the shortages are one part of it. The war was another. That generally requires more building, and then toss the industry change back in April as the third. Between those three pillars, yeah, I can see where all three have an effect and combined doing quite a bit.
There's also a bump. It starts going down and then everything jumps up. What happened there?
That was the OR DNA change, so everyone reprocessed. I'm assuming everyone reprocessed. So I would imagine that this chart is minerals, not ore. So when you went from the ore DNA change, then everyone reprocessed all their stockpiled ore, and then that made a bunch of minerals, and then the industry change hit, and they had to burn through those minerals. That's the way that I read it, and I don't know because I believe they said during the thing that CSM hasn't seen these graphs yet, and I haven't. So that's just kind of how I read it based on, the changes over the past few years.
Which is really cool that, we're able to show this to you today. Thank you, CCP, for that. I think this helps. People, don't like the idea there's no y-axis on here. Why isn't there a y-axis on here?
I don't know. I don't even know who showed these. Was it CCP Rattati or CCP Psych? You'd have to ask them.
I was afraid to say, but he started typing in the channel when we were showing it. This is the end of our 2.5 hour post Q&A session. Like the last half hour, he starts talking to us and posting these. It was CCP Psych, and these had not been seen by CSM, so we were super excited to get them. It was the first time we could visualize the stockpile movements and just how successful shortages has been and how things are trending towards a healthier place. So, I mean, the evidence is right there.
There's a question in chat. I think it's probably directed toward Kevin Kenneth, when you mentioned OR DNA change. Can you explain what that was for some of the folks that don't know?
Okay, yeah, the OR DNA change means before the patch, when you say you refined Arcanor, you got so much trit, so much this, so much this, so much that. And then the patch changed it. So after the patch, if you refine Arcanor, you don't get any trit. You get whatever you get now and some megasite, I think. And so the actual DNA of the ore changed, meaning when you reprocess, you get a different something now than before. So the DNA is kind of the mineral makeup of a specific ore type.
Yeah, we can confirm that's what Syke said, that was the OR DNA change. So basically, it was another rush to burn those stockpiles into minerals, which would explain that this was a spike of minerals. So we have our first clue that these are minerals, not just materials.
Yeah, that's the way I would read it. And like he said, he kind of gave the CSM some round numbers of, this is how much is left. And I'm not going to say how he phrased it, but we kind of had an idea. And so, but we had never seen a chart. We only got numbers a couple times just to kind of get an idea of how the stuff was working type thing. But the chart's pretty telling. Yes, it doesn't have a y-axis. You don't know if this is FI.RE or MEX or whatever, but
You don't know the quantities. I think that's what people want to know.
Okay, yes, you don't know the quantities, but there are horizontal lines. So even if you just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's almost no chance it's like a logarithmic graph or something like that. It's linear. So if you look at the light blue one that was hanging around the second line up and went up to between the fourth and fifth lines, that's 100 to 125% increase in stockpiles from 2017 to 2019, and now it's back down to right around the 3 line. So it's right now at 50% higher than it was back in 2015 to 2017, and it's still on the downward trend. So you can assume that it's still going to go down a little bit more. And like I said, will it go back down to the 2 line and hang out there? Will that be its new equilibrium? No one knows, because the new mining stuff has only been in a couple weeks now. It'll take months for that to work itself back out. But these are the type of graphs that CCP will look at and determine, hey, how close did we get back to our equilibrium? And then is the equilibrium where we want it to be, or is it too high or too low? And they can either trim from there as needed or add a little bit back in as needed. But those will be fine-tuning changes. I don't see another, gigantic Thor's hammer coming in and hitting the ore again.
All right, a wild Fonsui appeared. How's it going, Fonsui?
Good afternoon.
One of our resident TIS scientists. What do you make of this graph, Fonsui? You're into this stuff.
So there's not a whole lot to make of it. It's just so as we know, this graph, all these images were sanitized for us because CCP is very cagey about releasing information that could potentially compromise confidentiality of player organizations, individual players, or perhaps their own internal plans. So, they were able to give us this basically as a favor, essentially. So that's why we don't have the units or the scale for the y-axis, or and that's also why we don't have the type of item that it is. But as we can see, it just the the curves alone are enough to tell a story.
And what's that story to you?
So we see where we end up. We're ending up now. I'm not going to say anything that hasn't already been said. We're ending up at approximately late 2018, 2019-ish levels in terms of stockpiles based on these graphs now. And this is the point at which CCP is choosing to turn the spigots back on. They have said that they expect these stockpiles to drop further once capital production and other sorts of production become viable again, because people have been stockpiling and not building. So these lines can get a little bit lower, but I don't personally think that they were going to keep trying to get us back down to the 2017, early 2018 levels of stockpiles. I don't think that that's necessarily practical. Maybe it could have been done, but it would have taken another 6 months or a year or even longer, or would have taken worse, harsher measures, for scarcity. And I don't think anyone would have liked that or put up with that.
But one more year of scarcity, I think we'll be back into fighting shape. What do you think?
I mean, so yeah, if that graph is, yeah, you're just trying to piss people off now or stir the pot. I mean, so that while that graph was going down, and we can assume it would have continued to go down and may have in fact reached the old stockpile levels after another year, the natives were extremely restless, and I think that something had to give. So I'm not sure that we ever got to see the fullness of the vision of the ecosystem project.
Yeah. I think it could have gone lower, but it's trending in the right direction. Who knows? Remember, the shortages and the scarcity and all that stuff and the chaos, right? The era of the chaos era, whatever it was, that Hilmar talked about back in 2019. He's like, we're going to try things. We're going to move dials. We're going to shake people up. We're going to traumatize the player base. That's what they did. They promised to traumatize you, and you can tell they have traumatized some players. And some players are going to shake loose. I think CCP is okay with that. I don't think they like it, but I think they're okay with it, because the idea is to shock players back into a situation where they're facing adversity and they need to fight through it. They need to adapt. They need to, literally wake up. They were getting way too passive, I think. The concrete was getting too firm, as Hilmar said. So I think that's what it is. So the era of chaos, I think, we're still in it. I asked Hilmar, is it over? And he said, if I told you it was over, that would go against the whole idea of chaos. The idea is surprises, quick changes, meaningful changes with not a lot of dev work and, a lot of thrown away work because people didn't like the feature that came out. Instead, they're going to work with the system that's there, improve it, improve their ability to improve it, and so forth. So there it is. The era of chaos. I think we're still in it. The scarcity, just like chaos, I think we're still in it. I don't know if it's scarcity, but the idea that we have a whole different paradigm to how you harvest and how you build, that's a permanent change. So that trend line might keep going down until it reaches a new equilibrium, and who knows where that's going to be. Maybe it goes back up.
So I also want to, so obviously they didn't, because they couldn't give us, the quantities and scale in this. But I'm curious, as far as why, I would like to know what determined the peak of that graph, say, in 2020 and 2021. What defined that level of stockpiling as bad, and what defined the 2016-17 level of stockpiling good, and and based on that, how do they consider the current level of stockpiles? What actual impact does this have on the gameplay and the meta, etc.? People having stockpiles of this size. So they may have thought that through. Yeah, they may have thought that through and have answers for those. They may not have, but if they have thought those through and have answers, they certainly haven't shared them with us.
I think a clue to that might have been in Hilmar's talk about the era of chaos coming back. One of the things that always stuck with me that he mentioned briefly was that loss no longer had meaning.
Right. So that has been discussed. So I would obviously, players having too much stuff makes losses less meaningful. But without knowing the actual values that we're talking about, what values are associated with those low lines in the graph in 17, and what values are associated with the high lines in 21, and what actual impact on player behavior did those numbers have. So again, they may have studied this extensively. They may have, advanced metrics and say, well, when players have X amount of stuff, they do this, and when they have Y amount, they do that, and that's why we're trying to get to this Z amount or whatever. They may know all this stuff, or they may not. But if they have considered, what the target is and what that means, then they certainly haven't shared that.
I don't think they will either. That's highly NDA, I would imagine, from the way that they see it.
Gosh, can't imagine why.
Right. So there it is. The stockpile is pretty stable from 2014 and 2017. There was a ton of players in EVE Online at that time for various reasons, but that's that same timeline. And then between 2000 and right around 2017, 2018, it jumps way up to about 3 times its numbers in a very steep incline, levels out through 2020, and then starts to come down, basically, I think, because of shortages or pulling the mining or changing the mining that happened around mid-2020. The war might have had something to do with it. I don't know. A lot of things were destroyed, but we won't know the answer to that. All right. Thanks again, CCP, for that. That's really cool to see that you guys are on your way. And it's very encouraging. We had some very, very encouraged players who contacted us and said they were they really liked what they saw here with those graphs. That really sunk it for them. Sunk in that the whole thing was for something. I think you've heard Dunk say that.
That's kind of important. Yeah.
One second.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you've heard Dunk say that, like, what's all this for? It didn't work. And I think if it was all for cutting out some shortages, it did work. So this is the evidence that we kind of needed to answer that question. Before, we just had to take it on faith.
And that's kind of my issue, or one of my issues with this process. See, look what they gave us. It was one dude taking his own initiative to give us some extremely thin data. Like, yes, this is useful. Yes, this is interesting, and we can derive much from it. But this is very thin data. This is highly sanitized. And like, look, and you said that even this minimal effort by one person with some very, very thin data got people to say, maybe I am on board. How much more buy-in would have been bought by just the tiniest bit of official effort from this team throughout the process to make the players feel listened to and feel engaged and feel kept up to date and feel valued and respected?
Well, correction though, Fonsui, CCP Swift says the graph was prepared for the Q&A, and we just didn't get to it, he says. So they meant to show this, and that was part of their attempt to do, what you're saying. So it wasn't just an accident or one guy acting on his own. It was
okay.
an effort.
Even so, it is some very thin data, and
it did some good. It did so much. Look how impactful it was. It did good. How much more good would have been done throughout the process?
Well, you got to be careful during the process, though, because it's ripe for abuse. Showing it after is one thing, because
we know the argument against.
Yeah, well, you can't go back and abuse it now because it's done. But showing it during, they were even, when the DNA changes came out, they showed them to the CSM on like Monday morning, and they, we're like, and they're like, nope. And it went live like the next day. We basically got a heads up that, hey, this is coming, and then that's it, because they purposely held it from us so that we wouldn't be marginalized by possibly doing something. And they've done that on several of these things along the way. And that's fine.
I'll be precise then, instead of being general. If we had heard something along the lines of, we have set goals, we are X% of the way towards them, or something like that. Even something like that could have been helpful, but we didn't even get that. We didn't even get we're doing well, we're doing poorly, percentages, nothing. Like, there is a level of sanitization and obfuscation that could have been employed to provide some level of communication.
Yeah, that still could be exploited, though.
Yeah, CCP Paragon says the problem with showing behind the curtain is that it affects behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a tough line to walk, but it was not walked at all.
Yep, and that was their choice. You may not like it, but even the CSM was cut out of 95% of this. That way, there was no one could say, oh, someone had an advantage or something like that. They just cut everyone out. I don't like it either, but I understand the reason that they did it. And the fact that they're showing it after, I really like that, but there's not much you can do. It's just part of it, and I'm sorry, but I know you understand the reason that they did it too. You just got to accept it.
Well, the idea here is that I kind of feel like you come to the table with your preconditions, and I trust CCP because they've made a great game and they've continued to make a great game. They've changed things in ways that I don't like, but I trust them. And when they tell me something, I actually believe it. And I think if you're going to just doubt what they're telling you or what they're not telling you and what that means, there is no end to the pit that you're going to be in against the game, especially when your experience is affected. So my point is, we can argue about this all day long. Do you believe CCP when they tell you something? Because look, they told us we're going to have an era of chaos. We've had it. We're in it. We're going to have scarcity to fix stockpiles. We've had it. We see that it works. What they have been saying, and they said it was going to be painful, and it was painful. So everything that they're doing, that they say they're doing, is proven true. So I trust them, and I trust what they're saying.
I got to take down a straw man from chat, though. So there was the opinion that people who want 100% of the information ahead of time should screw themselves. However, no one was asking for 100% of information ahead of time. I was asking for a percentage, but the percentage was the only information I was looking for.
All right. Well, we got to wrap it up. There was one last thing. We put it in chat, and that is that the Triglavian, and we'll put it in the show notes too. The Triglavian mining ship is something that was mentioned, and Cosmic actually pulled that quote for us. Put it again in chat.
Oh, I'm looking.
I got it. I put it back in there. Okay. So that's that. Check that out. Sorry we couldn't get to it. We'll talk about it later on. That is something that's going to happen in the future. It's not in the game right now. Again, thank you guys very much. We have to wrap up now. It was really nice to see Katia again, and look out for that series that's coming up in a few weeks. It's going to start in January. You should be getting to the Snowball fight in Luminarie. Don't miss that. That's happening really soon. And thanks, Nick and Kenneth, Fonsui, and our guest Cosmic, who is a trailblazer in ninja mining and making a ton of money doing it. This was a great show. Hope you liked it. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations. Thanks, guys.